Hello everyone and welcome back to Our Summer Moments. My name is Colleen and today I am going to work from a recipe. In fact, the next two videos that I put up will be old recipes that came out of our Imler Reunion cookbook. So these are recipes that were made by my cousins and aunts and great aunts. Some of them have been passed down more generations than that probably. And I think that food is one of the few ways that we can reach back and connect with our ancestors who we've never met. Today I am going to work on a recipe that was my mother's. It was for salmon cakes, and I only ever remember her making this a couple of times, but I may be misremembering that, but I do believe that it was just a few times because it was a little fancier dish that you didn't always have the ingredients for. So today we're going to work on my mom. Her name was Jenny. We're going to work on her recipe for salmon cakes or salmon patties. And I'm happy to be recording this because this will be an opportunity for my grandchildren who never had an opportunity to meet Granny to be able to connect with her through food. And that is one of the reasons that we collect recipes, is to be able to pass them on generation after generation. So even though she's been gone for a long time now, 20 years this year, we will be able to remember her through the bites that we take when we eat this meal. And I miss her every single day. So this is a good way for me to reach out and touch her as well. So I'm going to gather up the ingredients. We'll be working today with some home canned salmon, but you can certainly buy the tins from the store, which is the way most people would be making these cakes. I just happen to have canned some last year. So I'll gather up everything that we're going to need for this recipe, and we will move forward and make Granny's salmon cakes. And I hope that you guys enjoy this video. So I feel like I've gotten everything gathered up. I am working with two 8-ounce jars of salmon. Now, once they're drained, of course, they're not going to be 8 ounces anymore. They'll be right about where I need them. So you need between around 14 ounces of salmon. This is some beautiful pink salmon that I got last year in canned. It smells absolutely delicious. I'm going to drain this completely, and in fact I'm going to get some kitchen towel and I'm going to make sure that it's really dry. We want to have about 1 to 2 tablespoons of the fish liquor left in the meat. And that's about it. I was able to get this salmon last year at a really good price, and it was boneless. I left the skin on it because the skin just seems to add so much more flavor to salmon when it's being canned. And I'm going to let this drain for a few minutes. So I'm just going to move it aside and I'll step into a few of the other ingredients. I've got this egg dangerously rolling around the counter. I'm not quite sure where to put it. I've got a lot of things going on. So I'm going to start with the zesting, about 2 teaspoons of lemon zest into the big bowl that I'm going to mix everything in. I really don't need a bowl this big, but I thought that it was one of the only ones I had that was glass, and hopefully you can see what's going on, that I'm not keeping any trade secrets from you or anything like that, that this dish can turn out wonderfully. This is a really old-fashioned dish in that it was used a lot during the war times when it was hard to get your hands on protein, and one of the things that you could do was get fish, not just salmon, but all kinds of fish. You could fish them from the rivers and streams, and you could can them and keep them for other times. And I have plenty in there. And you need about 2 teaspoons of lemon zest. And I need about 3 tablespoons, I think the recipe calls for. I'll just double check. 3 tablespoons. Where is that on there? No, it isn't. It's 2 tablespoons. About 2 tablespoons of green pepper. Now this is one you could leave out if you didn't have it. It's on Mom's recipe, but I don't remember Mom using it, but it's been a long time. It's been 20 years since there was any chance I would have had her salmon cakes anyway, so keep that in mind. You get out these old recipes and they bring back all kinds of memories, and it's wonderful to have them, but sometimes these memories make water run from our eyes, and that's okay too, because it's good for us to keep their memory alive so that we can help our children and grandchildren to reimagine or to imagine, I guess not reimagine, to imagine the wonders that were the people who made it possible for them to be on this planet today. I am grateful every day for the wonderful parents that I had. Times were not always easy, and we lived in a rural setting, and my dad wasn't a farmer, although we kept a few animals here and there. My mom wasn't a particularly fantastic gardener, but we had a garden from time to time, and so we lived our life kind of on the edge of 2 communities, on the edge of the farming community and on the edge of the more suburban community, I guess. I think that's the easiest way to put it. So now I need 3 teaspoons of green onions, and I just better give these a quick rinse because I've just brought them home from the grocery store. And I just want the green part from the onions, so I think I'll just choose a couple here. I'll put these aside. I'll clean this one up first. I'm going to take the roots off, wash them, and be right back. I should say also that I washed this lemon really good before I got busy using it today, because the lemon rind itself could hold all kinds of preservatives and you know, just from people handling them. So I like to wash all citrus that I'm going to use anyway, but I really particularly want to wash the citrus that I'm using the zest from. Now, am I getting there? I think a bit more. So I'm wondering how many of you watching have recipes in an old family cookbook, or the recipes that have been handed down to you that are just on a little piece of paper like this. I would be interested in knowing, and do they bring back memories for you when you get them out and make them? Do you remember to tell your children this was one of Grandma's recipes, or this one belonged to Aunt Ellen? It's definitely a way that we can keep people's memory alive, or pass on information about people to our kids through food. Okay, we're getting there. Now I'm going to need I'll throw the spices in here. I might as well just carry on as I'm doing. I need a teaspoon of garlic powder and a teaspoon of onion powder. These are pretty heavily spiced. Oh, look at the mess I made. Better be really careful here. And I'm also going to throw in a half a teaspoon of paprika. This is smoked paprika. Gives it a little unexpected hit. Now, I'll set these things out of the way as I go. I'm going to need a half a cup of breadcrumbs, and I've chosen the Italian seasoned breadcrumbs, but you could just use plain ones. That would work too. And I am getting the board down to where I need it to be. So I also need some dill in here. Now dill and salmon just go together. They're best of friends. So I'm just going to check and make sure that I had that remembered correctly. I need 2 tablespoons of chopped dill. And I managed to find some beautiful dill in the store, which this time of the year it's not always the easiest thing to find. And I'm not sure where this came from. Let's see, it was packaged in Mississauga, Ontario. And it was a product of Mexico. So that's how far away our food is coming from to get to our table. Coming all the way from Mexico. And I bought a package of garlic today that was coming from China. So neither of these places is really good for our food security. I think we need to be putting a lot more effort into growing our food locally. Now, wherever you are, that's local to you, for certain sure. Okay. I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting the worst of the stems off, because the big stems are not much fun to bite into. I'm just keeping the little fronds. And then I am going to chop these up with my knife. And of course, when you start chopping them, you end up with a lot less than you started with by volume. So you need to start off with a bigger pile. If you were to use more dill in this recipe than I am using, that would not be a problem at all, because the dill just brightens up the salmon like you can't believe. Okay, I'm going to say that's 2 tablespoons. Into the bowl it goes. I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to bring this salmon to the sink, and I'm going to get some paper towel, and I'm just going to blot this salmon to make sure that it's really good and dry. And any of the skin pieces at this time that I can remove, I'll remove, because they don't have the best mouthfeel when they've been canned. If it gets mixed in there, it's no big deal. I will be back right after this. Okay, so I've gotten my spices and breadcrumbs in the bowl, and I am now just looking towards getting the salmon in there. I have drained the juice off the salmon, and I'm going to dump it into the bowl and use a fork to mash up the pieces. And this salmon turned out beautifully. There's some advantages to canning your own meat if you can get your hands on it, and the biggest one being that it lasts such a long time. I'm not sure the date that I canned these, but it was last summer. In fact, I made a video about canning this salmon, so maybe I'll link that below if you may find some use in that. And now I want the salmon to be very, very minced up. And this should make 8 salmon patties. So really you could add a lot of protein to a meal just by opening a couple cans of salmon. And of course, the better the quality, the better the end result will be. But you don't have to use the poshest salmon in order to get the benefit of the protein or the flavor, because you're adding a lot of things to enhance it anyway. Now I'm going to add 1 egg to this. This is an extra large egg. A large egg would work just fine. And then I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil, and I may come back and add another tablespoon depending on how this all comes together. It's going to be pretty, it's going to be a pretty loose dough to start with. Dough. No, that's not the right word. It's going to be a pretty loose consistency to start with, and we want it to hold together well. So you can either add another egg, although that can kind of get sloppy, or you can add a little more olive oil, or if your salmon is particularly dry, then you can add both to it. Now, I've added as much olive oil as I want to the dish, so now I'm just going to add a little bit of the liquor that I've reserved back from the canned salmon, because why not add that flavor back in? One of the huge benefits of canning your own fish is that there's no loss of flavor when you can a fish, because the fish sits in its own juice, and so there's no loss. It doesn't get boiled away like a potato that you put in the pot and then you dump the water off. The salmon just sits in its own juice. Okay, now I'm going to give this a try and see if it'll form a patty. And I want the patty to hold together pretty nicely, and this looks like it's going to be just perfect. But before I go any farther, and keeping in mind that this meat has already been cooked, I'm going to taste it for seasoning right now. And it needs some salt and pepper. So I'm going to add that, and then I'll come back and we'll get on to these patties. So I'm going to give this a good sprinkle of salt. I'm going to say there's probably 1/4 teaspoon of salt in there, but you can add more. Don't be afraid to taste it. Remember, it's cooked. And I'm going to give it a good grind of pepper. I happen to think that pepper is one of the most underutilized ingredients in the kitchen. That we don't use it nearly as much as we could, nor do we give it the credit it deserves. Okay, so I'm going to bring over this pan, and here I have just a cookie sheet lined with a piece of parchment paper, and I have the waxier side of the parchment paper up, and I'm going to make these 8 patties, form them. I'm going to put them on the parchment paper, and then I'm going to put them into the fridge for at least a half an hour just to help them set up, because this is a pretty dry. So if you try to work with it when it's this loose, then you're going to have poor results. So it would fall apart in the pan is the poor result you're going to have. So we're going to do our best to keep it together. And we'll just get on with this and get these on the pan and into the fridge. Okay, so as I was preparing these to make them into balls, they weren't holding together how I wanted them to. So I added another egg to the mixture. So I'm going to adjust that on the final recipe. And I'm just going to sort of make these small balls to make sure that I'm getting 8 of them, so that the salmon patties are about the same size. They'll take the same amount of time to cook, and that way I can also try and make sure that I'm not making them so huge that they're not, you know, that they're out of line. So right now I think I have about 4 sizes going on here. So I'll beg and borrow back and forth from one to the other until I get them all even. And I started off really big. So right now I have 7, 8. But the last couple have been pretty skimpy. So I'm just going to borrow a little from some of the bigger ones and get these to all about the same size. I'm going to use my fingers. I'm going to make these into these balls, and then I'm going to set them onto the parchment paper. And then I'm just going to press them down. I'm trying to keep them in a nice round shape until I have them about a 1/2 inch thick. That's the goal, is a 1/2 inch. And it is okay to get out your ruler to make sure that they are 1/2 inch thick. And you want to try and keep the edges tight if you can, because that helps them when you're turning them over to be more cohesive. Not sure what to call that. And I hope that you're able to see this. Which way do I, there you go. And I hope that you're able to see what I'm up to here. Now, here they are, already formed up. Better hang on to them so they don't slide away. And ready to go into the fridge. So I'm going to put them in there. I think my husband will be home in about an hour, so I'm going to put them in the fridge for that long and allow them to set up really good before we head to the stove. And you can see this was not a difficult recipe, and we're just going to make a little yogurt sauce with dill to go along with it, with dill and lemon juice, and this makes a nice added protein. Or if you're just having hors d'oeuvres, or you want to have it as part of a main meal, it all works really well that way. So I'll see you back here when it's time to cook these up. I was going to wait to start cooking the salmon patties before I made the sauce, but I thought as long as I had my dirty equipment out anyway, the board that I'd already cut some dill on, I might as well just go ahead and carry on with this, and then it can be in the refrigerator getting colder at the same time. So I need the juice, I need about the juice of 1/2 lemon, and I don't want to get the seeds into the bowl, so I'm just using a little mini strainer to strain out the seeds. And I need about 1 tablespoon, which I think I've probably already exceeded. This was a really, really good juicy one. And then I need about a cup, 3/4 of a cup of a good quality Greek yogurt. The best that you can afford. Doesn't have to be the best on the market. And then 2 tablespoons of chopped dill. And I'm going to give this a stir. I'll have to reach for actually I'll use this spoon right here. And this is one of those things that can really be the difference between your dish being a little more high-end and not, is to have a bit of dipping sauce to go on the side. Now I'm going to taste this because I find that a lot of sauces are on the side, but they haven't been seasoned, and they therefore are really not that useful. No, it does need a little bit of salt, and I'm going to get another spoon. If you weren't watching me, honestly, I'd probably use the same spoon again, but I've had some complaints about that I like to spoon and then put it back in the food. I think a lot of home cooks do that. And my timing is excellent because my husband is just right now pulling in the yard. You may be able to even catch him there on the microwave because our microwave faces the road, and you'll see a lot of vehicles driving by in the reflection there. That is much better. I'm glad I added that little bit of salt. Okay, I'm ready to get the pan hot and get on with cooking these up so that we can have some for our lunch today. I have the salmon patties out of the fridge, and I have this pan warming up on the stove, and I have a bit of oil in the bottom of the pan. So now I'm just going to carefully remove these patties from the paper, and it might even be helpful at this point to use a spatula just to slide underneath them. And They're holding together quite well. And we're just going to cook these. I'm going to actually set a timer for how long these should cook, because we definitely don't want them to be overcooked, but we also don't want them to be undercooked, because we do have eggs in here now, so they will need to be cooked. So I'm going to set this for, once it starts to sound like it's frying, because right now the pan is still not terrifically hot, then I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes, and then I'll be right back after that. I've just had the timer beep to let me know that these have been in the pan on that side now for 3 minutes, so I'm just going to gently turn them over, and you can see how beautifully they've browned up. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We'll let them be there for 3 minutes. And then I will remove them from the pan and get them onto a plate so that you can see what they look like when they're all ready to eat. And see how nice they're holding together? That's beautiful right there. Okay, so I'm going to set the timer once again for 3 minutes, and then I will be back shortly. Well, I've taken 3 of the beautiful little salmon patties out of the pan, and now I'm just going to add a scoop or 2 of the sauce that we made, which is just simply some Greek yogurt, lemon juice, and some dill. And this is going to be our lunch for today. We're going to enjoy these a lot, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video. And if you have enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving it a thumbs up or a like, and share it with your friends. Until next time, folks, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.